Cherry, and we are live here for the very first time in 2021.
Okay, hi everybody.
The Sanctuary Radio Show.
This is Wendy Cherry, and we are.
So, welcome. We have been through a lot since the last time that we've seen each other, and we have a lot of good information tonight. We are moving towards our 1-year anniversary of being on lockdown. And so that's a lot. And so what I wanted to do was to have some experts on to talk about what does that look like for us? What does, many of us have lost lots of things. We've lost people. And I'm saying that we also have a delay in the opportunities that we have had. I'm not saying we've lost any opportunities, because we don't want to say that. What I'm going to say is that they will come back and they'll be better. But life has changed as we knew it. And that's painful. And that's scary. And there's a lot of uncertainty. But at the same time, there's also a lot of opportunity. So what I want to do is to give the ladies an opportunity to go onto their Facebook pages and to share this. I'm going to do the same. So give us a second, and then we'll get right to it.
All right.
So please, this is going to be a great show, as always. Again, welcome to the Sanctuary. We haven't been here in a while, and we are just excited to be here to share this information, because I have definitely been feeling a certain kind of a way, and just wanted to get some tools. So let me share to my own page that we're live. And if you have any questions, then please feel free to ask. Let's see. Of course, my thing won't let me share. Hold on.
So let me share to my page, to my own.
Share to a page. Share to my page. Okay. I'm not sure why it's not letting me share to my page, but we're gonna figure it out. So just give us a second. This is important. So we just want to make sure that we give you everything that you need and everybody can see what they need. Okay. So Tameka and Erica, welcome to the Sanctuary.
Thank you.
This is the Sanctuary Radio Show, and here we talk about all different types of things. And we have been talking about the coronavirus since the beginning. Like I talked about it since the beginning because I realized there was something amiss. There was something going on, and I saw it as an opportunity for people to kind of tap into themselves, to get quiet. These are things that I was doing anyway. So it really didn't come as a surprise to me. And then I also had been working from home for 9 years before everybody else started working from home. So I did like how to not strangle your boo and your babe when you come home, when you bring all the computers home. We talked about immunity and vitamin D. We talked about all these different things. And dag nabbit, if we ain't about to hit March again, where it will be the first anniversary, the first year anniversary of this whole lockdown and pandemic happening. So Tameka and Erica, I would like for you to first to share who you are and what you do. And then secondly, I would like for you to talk about like maybe what you've been doing since the pandemic and how you've been preserving your own peace at this time.
Erica, I'll let you go.
Okay. So good evening, everyone. Glad you can make space for us in your space tonight. My name is Erica Phillips. Who I am is comprised of all the things that I love, which is music and outdoors and meditation and my family and all of that. What I do is I'm a mental health therapist and a motivational coach and consultant. In regards to what I've been doing in terms of just keeping my sanity in the movement, all these moving parts, it's just really leaning into how I'm feeling, just day by day, moment by moment, and then leaning into the things that make me feel good, that bring me joy. Those characteristics are part of who I am, trying to stay connected and in touch with remembering those parts of myself.
Wow, wonderful.
Tameka?
So good evening, everyone. Hello, Facebook. My name is Tameka Tunsil. I am a licensed psychotherapist. I am also a clinical supervisor for a team of therapists. And this certainly has been an interesting year. Who I am, I would say, has changed a lot since this pandemic. This forced pause has really had me to stop and look at my identity that was often wrapped in what I do and who I serve and what organizations I'm in and what I do for friends, family, and all of that. And I had to stop and adjust and realize that I needed to do some self-check on who Tameka is and what that looks like when she doesn't have all that going on. When I'm not running around doing, which I enjoy doing, but when I'm not doing that and I'm forced to stop for whatever reason, that was a shock for me. Like, okay, what now? So a lot of that has happened this year for me, including just figuring this whole thing out, right? As an essential staff, I still had to go in, and then we were able to transition to a hybrid model. So trying to figure that out and remain safe, and then just take care of myself in the process. And I realized that how I was doing that looks very different now. And I know we're going to have that discussion tonight, but how I was doing that and what I was doing looks very different. And it's not necessarily a bad thing.
Right.
Not necessarily a bad thing.
For me, I was just launching a book. I had just released my book and I was on a tour. I had just come back from, so we're talking about grieving and grieving the bygone lives.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my life was fine before this. There always was room for improvement. I feel like I could always have something better, but I was pretty content and grateful and everything with what was happening at the time. And had just finished Atlanta, LA, and Richmond. And while we were in Richmond on this book tour, everybody was talking about this virus that's in China, right? But I think maybe a few cases had happened here. This was the end of February. This is Black History Month, around this time probably. Mm. And then my whole calendar of March was totally filled, including an opportunity to be featured at the Kennedy Center. So I was like, look, Ma, I made it. But the Rona, because that week of that event is when everything shut down. I was actually booked every single day of the week, and the weekend, that March 13, 15, 16 timeframe, shut down. So as time went on and I started to realize that we weren't going anywhere and everything was drying up and everybody was canceling and nobody felt safe, it also was sort of like a grieving process that I had to go through, because it's like, who, like you're just starting to catch momentum and then you're going out there. But then I realized it was the whole world. Like television production shut down, the Olympics shut down, the class of 2020, their school year was like shut down. So then I started to realize it was this societal grief that we were experiencing. So can we talk about what we're talking about is trauma, because we are all traumatized on some level. Now, I'm not sure if everybody realizes that they're traumatized, but on some level, whether you've lost parents or grandparents or loved ones or spouses, or you lost opportunities at that moment or whatever, we're all grieving. And so Can you explain to us sort of like what the traumas look like and maybe what they're called and what some of how everybody exhibits differently, but maybe some of the feelings that we could be feeling in our bodies that would let us know that we are holding in anxiety and we are traumatized. Anybody can take the question.
Right. You want me to start?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. I think, because I know we're trying to be very conversational about this. People think grief and they associate that with what we know to be like primary loss, right? Loss of a loved one, major life event and stuff. But we don't think about secondary losses like what's happening now. A change in routine, loss of connections, social connections, those secondary losses that we're all experiencing, that we're experiencing as major now, but people typically look like, if I lose a few friends, or if I disconnect with family, or I can't go to this event, or I can't go to this location, or to the library as often, or to the park as often, okay? But now that we can't before just because it was hard to fit in the routine, but now that we can't, or we couldn't before, things are changing a little bit now. That is trauma. That's trauma for a lot of people, especially if your identity was wrapped in or influenced by what you did, who you surrounded yourself with, the connections you have. Because when we think identity, right, most people think about, or when we think about things that we're losing, you think about the major stuff, as I mentioned. You don't think about these other things that make up who you are. Like Erica, even when you introduced yourself, it was, hearing all the things that you like to do and your family and all of that. And I could, say many of the same. When we are stopped from our being able to experience those things, then that's trauma, that's grief. It's a loss, right? So it's not just the death of someone or some major life event. It's any change that impacts our routine and impacts our identity and who we are, right? So now we have to contend with that. What do we do now that things look different and we may not be able to, for a little while, go back to the things that we knew that was our identity before,
Yeah.
And then, there's shock, there's anger, there's denial, there's the physical stuff, reaction, stress, anxiety, all the things that you can think of and you recognize when you have some major loss and event, and now you're experiencing it on some other level. Why is the fact that I can't go to work stressing me out? Or, that type of thing. But it's a change in your identity, something that you were influenced by. And then when you have no control of it.
Yeah. It's interesting because my mom, my mom doesn't listen, so she ain't gonna talk about her. But my mom is an intro extrovert. Like, she likes to be in her little space, but she will be out and about and having her good old time. But now that she can't, she's very isolated. So
visceral reaction, right?
Yeah. When, like when you can't do something because somebody else said you can't do something, that's a whole different ball game. And so for us, we didn't see my mom from December of Christmas of 2019, until September. And we pretty much bum rushed her in September because the line that was in the sand for me was July, which is her birthday. We always go to Jersey in July. We always celebrate her birthday. We always go see my siblings and my friends. When that didn't happen,
you were ready to flip the table.
Yeah, I was like balled up, getting a little self-soothing with my thumb in my mouth, like what?
Right.
But by September, I was like, we coming. We 95 south, 95.
Your brain went from 0 to 10, catastrophizing that one time to we'll never be able to do this again. Because that's what we do, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
My mom is a little bit older. And so I was afraid, like, am I going to see my mom again? This is like, let's just go for it. We going. Because we don't know what's going to happen. So I kind of chuckle at her. So my daughter has done 2 surprise, just stand on grandma's steps one on Christmas Day and one on Valentine's Day. From down here, she went to Jersey and she just did it because we need to see her. She's not a video person. But I'm realizing that it's causing a lot of like pain for me because I'm used to seeing my mom, you know, occasionally when we go up there for the holidays, but to not be able to see her because she's like, stay away.
Yeah.
She like, stay away. And so that's another level of grief. So I know that in trauma, I know that I hold the grief and trauma in my cheeks. I have ground out my teeth. You know, I wear a night guard now, but I hold all of the stress. When I know I'm stressed, it's in my neck, it's in my shoulders, and then I get real stiff and I have to always catch myself. So that's kind of like an example of how, you know, I'm managing it or holding it in my body. So Erica, what do you think?
Yeah, I think you guys hit on what this collective experience has been. This grief and mourning process has been about a power and control situation, right? It's one thing to make the decision that I'm not going to do X, Y, and Z, or I don't feel like it or whatever. It's another thing to have that power and control taken away from you. I think that's the part that collectively a lot of people are having a challenging time with swallowing. You hit the nail on the head, Tameka, by saying just grieving the loss of identity. Grief surpasses beyond just death. It's loss of relationships, it's of, you know, employment, it's loss of the ability to move the way that you want to move. It's all of those things. And so then if not addressed, right, it just sits with you. Trauma, we talk about trauma stays stored in the body. You avoid something, you resist it, it persists. So I think this has been a season where a lot of people are confronted with a lot of things in their life. A lot of things are revealed to you because we were all kind of put in this collective timeout. I think the other day I was describing on social media feeling like being grounded back in the day when I was a kid. Like, can I go outside and play with my friends now? Like, I'm tired of being, you know, in the house. And so I think that is, you know, those are the things that is hard to swallow. I know for me personally, what has been revealed, like big time, it's such a vulnerable space, is the parenting piece. I realized within this where my strengths lie as a mom and where my weaknesses lie as a mom. And what do I do with that? Because the weaknesses were blown all up in my face. But I was just like, man, I'm not the mother that this 24/7, but the perception and the collectively using in society is that, you know, as a mom, you should be available 24/7, you know, for your children. But then where is the space for you to recoup? And so the activity, the planner, like we're traveling, we're destination, we're going to go yesterday because it was so nice. We threw everything to the wind, took a couple of chunk of hours, went hiking over on Roosevelt Island in DC. Like those are the things that I do. In the house, I realized was revealed to me as a mom, want to retreat. And that's my space and time to recoup. And it flip-flop. My husband is the one that he's good with them, like in the house. In the house, I'm like, hands off. If I'm not in session with clients, like I kind of want to, you know, just retreat word, but that can't, I had to find, well, not find, I'm still working through that, trying to figure out that. So
I was going to say, tell me the answer then.
I'm still working on that. But I think various things for various people have been revealed to them during this time because we've all been forced to sit down. And when you sit still, then you can start to see and reflect and think about things.
It's interesting because my daughter is class of 2021. So even though class of 2020, it happened to them, they still had the whole first part of their year, maybe 3/4 of this year to be able to do the things of football games and all these different things. But she is in a situation where class of 2021, they've been all over the place, half hybrid, half coming in, then stay home because somebody got sick. It's been really a roller coaster. But the interesting part of it is that she's on the honor roll this year. She hadn't been before because of just whatever. There were lots of different stresses and things of the getting up early, the traveling across town and doing whatever she had to do to go to school. So but I too have figured out myself as a mom a little bit better. I always work from home, so I'm comfortable in that space. But separating the time when I'm working to when I want to just relax. So I actually had never really binged watched a whole bunch of shows on Netflix before, but I watched a few different things, and then I watch them with my daughter. And I don't know if you all have seen this meme, but I mean, this, I think it's a TikTok. It's the funniest thing. Like, I had a whole belly laugh. My daughter is a bat. She stays in her room. It's sunny outside. She got the curtains down. She stays in there on the phone, on her laptop, and it drives me crazy. But this meme says, I mean, this TikTok says, I thought I wasn't your little friend. Why don't you call Miss Shirley and Miss Barbara? Because now I'm trying to like snuggle. Let's watch All American. You know, let's watch Never Ever Have I Ever, or something.
Right.
So that I can get that touch.
Yeah.
Because we haven't, she's a hugger, I'm a hugger, but that human touch, that isolation, those things, non-sexual touch for couples,
Right.
like we haven't been able to do that because they keep saying to social distance. I think it's a physical distance thing. I don't think it's a social thing, because we are social beings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we're going against our nature. So what do you all have to say about that?
Mhm.
Well, my experience was a little different. And I don't think that's because I am certainly a social person. You know me, Wendy, right? I'm a social person, but what I realized about myself is I am definitely more an introvert. That's when you said that, I raised my hand. I said, ooh, there were certain pieces of the slowdown and the distancing that I'm not going to say I was okay with, but did not, I don't know, it didn't bother me as much as some other people, not because I didn't miss social connectedness, but I think because of that opportunity to slow down and recalibrate, right? And it's interesting. And one thing when I talk to people, and I know we'll get into this later about just strategies and how best to cope, is what I often say is, that whole acceptance and reconciliation of kind of where we are now and what it means in this new routine and what you want to come out of it. And we know that this pandemic, there certainly has been devastation and loss, but what have you learned about yourself? And I've learned a lot about myself. I've learned that some ways that I was coping, no, it can't come into this new way. It cannot. It was not the best way to cope. It was just how, I happened to be in that moment. So, that was what was important for me, was really coming out of this, learning some valuable lessons about myself, in addition to keeping myself safe and all of that. It's use this opportunity to learn what you need to learn about yourself.
Yeah. To
recalibrate and adjust and come out of this with that opportunity. What are the things that I've learned? What are the skills that I've picked up? I think, you, Erica, as a professional, we certainly have picked up some skills and how we've had to be available to people and in what way, and the importance of continuing to take care of ourselves. Anyone that would tell you that is in mental health or behavioral health fields will tell you that gets lost because we're so used to giving and helping that we get lost in that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. One of the things that I really stand hard on is that just the concept of remembering who you are at the core, because it's easy for us to start out here and then all life stuff pile up on, and we move further and further and further away from who we are. Then the next look up and we're like, what happened? I don't even remember what that looks like. How do I get back to that feeling? And I think for me, that's where the self-preservation has to just speaking on, like, when you were talking about the concept of self-care, Wendy, same, like self-preservation, like it's necessary. It's priority over anything else. it starts there. It's really spiritual. Like it has to be.
Yes.
Because if I can't stay connected, or have awareness or insight when I'm losing connection with who I am at the core, then I can be nothing else to anybody. Right. So the ability to even make space and room for clients, make space and room for my daughters, my husband, my friends, extended family, all of that. Like I can't do that if I'm not connected and grounded to who I am. And so that has been really critical. This definitely has been a tough adjustment. It hasn't, I've had a different tragedy that happened in my life that just completely rocked my world and swept me off my feet, that really made me tap into the concept of the feeling to heal journey. So being able to sit in some of the pain and things that we're going through, leaning into it. So I think that part is important too, because a lot of times we want to run from or move away from the things that make us uncomfortable, but it's also a good practice to get comfortable with what makes you uncomfortable too. So yeah.
I would like to hear some of your tips, because I got a few different things that came up, but then I also want to, and I'm going to write it down, the leaning in part, girl, because leaning in. What you mean? Like,
look, listen, and we are the professionals, but we're people too. So you see, I have my okay. Come on, in case Erica says something, you know.
Yeah. So I want to know what that looks like. Like,
listen,
into like.
Right.
Yeah. So I talk about this concept with clients about flushing out the pain. So what are pain points? What are your pain points right now in your life? What does that look like? And you can look at it as like the analogy when we're talking about setting a table and having a plate. What's on your plate? Things that are on your plate, do all of them need to be there right now? Because sometimes priorities all mixed up and jumped up and all over the place, right? So what can you take off of there? Flush out what are the things that are bringing you pain to your life right now, and sit with that for a little bit, because again, it's that avoidance space that is going to keep coming back to us. And a lot of it's going to pop up at the most inopportune moment when you're doing something that's non-related to that pain. And then it just shows up and it's just like, oh, how did that get here? Yeah. So the leaning in is, again, moving into that space of being comfortable with what's uncomfortable, because it is part of you. I feel like the most, I think I have it on my Facebook, the most painful parts of us, like cultivate the most beautiful parts of us too. Like it's part of the story. Sometimes we want to be like, I don't want that, but it is part of the story. So can you lean into it? Can you see what's trying to be revealed to you? Like, what is this pain trying to show you and teach you? And take it, those parts of it, and the other part of the pain, flush it away because it doesn't serve you anymore. So the leaning into it just really helps with kind of, how do I get out of this and not get stuck in this space and just go deeper and deeper into it?
Absolutely.
Okay, so now I know that people deal with pain a little differently. At the end of the day, they want comfort. It comes in many ways. I have been using chocolate chip cookies and pizza as my comfort. And I usually don't eat those things. Those are two of my favorites, all-time favorite, but I'm gluten intolerant. So go figure. But I know what it is because I know this. So I know what it is, but I know that I need comfort. And I know that my mom is not here and my other people are not here. My people who usually give me comfort, especially physical comfort and physical touch, are not here. So I've been heading to Wise Guys because they the only ones who got that good New York, New Jersey pizza.
Hey.
Then I've been getting the gluten-free cookies, which are not really that good, but I'm trying to do good. I'm doing the best I can. Still on the self-preservation. But I know that people drink it away, smoke it away, like Solange, like sex it away, buy it away. So I think that that's another good way to approach it would be to lean in, because I knew for myself, I'm grieving my own situations here. Life is changing and whatever, but I intentionally did not choose some other vices to try to soothe myself, because I knew that I was going to have to deal with it at some point. So I was just like, I'm gonna stand here, and you know, like you see on TV, you standing on like a rock and like the water's hitting you, and the winds and everything. I was just gonna have to feel it out, and that's not easy.
Right.
It doesn't feel good, but I felt like it was just something I had to do. So what do you?
Can I say something? I'm sorry, Wendy.
Sure.
Can I say something to that though? Because it was
Sure.
something Erica said earlier that really I think resonates with that, is the opportunity to slow down to even recognize that, right? Because if we are in this pace, the pace that we typically were in prior to this, right? You know, that's what we said, you know, our bygone lives prior to this, you may have made some different choices, but the opportunity to sit in the restfulness, if you will, right? In how our having to stop, you had an opportunity to process that a little differently and make some different choices, right? So the whole concept of leaning in, I love that, right? Because you had an opportunity to not fight against what is happening, because we have no control. It's an external factor. We have no control. Let me lean in, take this opportunity that's being forced upon me to process this a little differently and make some different decisions. So rather than picking up some things that you can identify as your vices, okay, you chose these two things that you still identify as a vice, but maybe not as severe as something else, right? And we all have that. We all have that.
Yeah.
You
know, people are their own experts. That's when I work with a client and said, listen, let me tell you, you're your own expert.
Absolutely.
I'm here to help you to see that and to pull out and to support you on this journey, because a lot of times, you know, those things are there, but because we can keep moving and shaking, we're like, I don't have time to deal with this. Oh, I'm a dodge. You know, that's what we do. But this forced, like, be still, that's where it's, you know, came tumbling.
That's where it lies. Yeah.
So now we are actually coming up on the year anniversary of the lockdown. And when everything kind of changed and everybody's lives changed, some people became gazillionaires, some people lost their homes, some people lost everything, and some people got married and had babies. I mean, there's all different types of things.
Right.
What kind of strategies, and because I was listening to this, and what made me want to do this show is I knew it, but I heard this show on NPR, and the woman who created, I guess, the 7 steps of grief, which I don't know how many steps there are, but
5 to 7,
she's the one who created it. But what she said was that the perception was that you go through these steps and you're done. And she said that's not what she meant. So she has spent the majority of her career trying to let people know that it comes in waves.
Right.
It doesn't just stop after you hit the 5th step or whatever. Right. So can we talk about the, you know, the steps of grief? People are grieving all different types of things, and strategies that you all would give your clients to, or maybe you've had to deal with grief.
Right.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about that.
Right. You know, it was a friend of mine, Carmen, she's actually, you know, one soror too, that said something that just resonated to me earlier today. Grief is the new pandemic, right? You know, as we're coming out of this, and I want to, you know, give her credit out, you know, of saying that. But when she said it, I said, ooh. Wow. Right. You know, grief is the new pandemic that we're having to deal with. So, you know, and I'm no expert on grief, but, you know, 5 stages that we typically know, right? Denial, anger, bargaining, despair, acceptance, right? And then I think, you know, there have been some additional stages, 5 to 7, but you're right. I mean, it's fluid, and, you know, it ebbs and flows, right? You can find yourself in a place of acceptance, and then something happens, or another tragedy or loss happens, and then you get kicked back. But that's just kind of the nature of life. Like, we go through our life. If there's anyone who hasn't experienced loss or grief, please tell me what that formula is.
Well, this is what the old people say: just keep living.
Just keep living, right? Just keep living. So, you know, a couple of things that I I know when I'm journaling and processing myself, and even when I'm talking to other people that are asked, and I wrote things I wanted to be sure, have I accepted where we are now? Okay. We're coming up on the year. Have I really accepted where we are now and what is happening? How am I coping? Am I coping well? Right? Because coping is stress management, right? That's our defense. That's how we manage things. Doesn't necessarily mean that we've been doing it well. But the good thing about that is we can attend to that, right? If we haven't been coping well, we can work through that. That we can deal with. As long as you know that you're not coping well, right? We can work through that. Is this routine that I'm having to develop now, is it working for me? Is it working for us, my family? What's the one thing that I have more time for now that I didn't before? And just, what is something that I've learned about myself? You can ask this about yourself, your spouse, your children. As Erica said earlier, she learned a lot about herself in her home, outside of her professional self. I've said the same, you've said the same, Wendy. What daily habit am I excited to keep up with? For me, and I'm going to start using self-preservation that you said rather than self-care, because that's powerful. I've learned a lot of different ways or better ways for self-preservation. So that's one thing that I want to carry into this new routine. And it's simple stuff like eating well or eating, drinking water, sleeping, getting fresh air, sitting down and exercising, the simple things that we think about. There's a lot that I can add to that list, but I'll come back to it. I'll let Erica have an opportunity to share.
So I want to touch just briefly on the grief part. I think it's good to just be mindful about how are we navigating the expectations of what it looked like, right? Totally love, it all makes sense. The 5 to 7 stages and all that to get that level of kind of just awareness and insight, but also know that all of that wrapped up is going to look different for every single person, depending upon, what's happening in their world, the type of grief that they're experiencing, all of that. And I use this analogy about an elevator that's out of control, like an out of order elevator, where you get up and you're like, yeah, today I'm going to the 12th floor, I'm going to the penthouse. And you push it and you end up on the 3rd floor. And 3rd floor is like, it's all right here, but I thought I was going to the penthouse, but that's where it took you. In that same day, you're like, all right, let's go. We're back in it. We're going to the penthouse and we only make it to the 10th floor. Okay, this is what we got, right? So you're just doing it. The next day, you end up in the basement and you're like, how did I get here? You hit multiple floors, in one day, and that's okay. So just kind of changing that narrative about what your grief is supposed to look and feel like, because it's going to look and feel different, from every moment. In terms of the coping, I'm big on needs assessment. Are you paying attention to what your needs are? What does that look like right now in this moment? Because we do have all these moving parts that are happening around us externally, but what can you keep in order for yourself internally? So if you're looking at, you can do needs across the spectrum. So your physical health, your professional development, your financial growth, your personal desires, your spiritual practices, all things, your emotional needs, they have a trickle down effect. And you want to look at it in terms of what is the current state of these needs in these particular area? What's your desired change? And then you want to look at why is this change important to me? How will I know personally that it looks like it's getting accomplished? What are 3 immediate steps, action steps I can take? So it's really kind of just getting down to the nitty gritty, but assessment of, can I pay attention to what I need right now in this moment? Because I might not be able to solve this external factor. I may not be able to, again, that power and control of this stuff that's happening around me. But what I can control is this inner work and these inner things and expectations that I'm holding myself, with. And sometimes if we can step outside of the midst of everything collectively that we're going through on top of regular life, right? Because there's just
Right.
pandemic, COVID, but our regular life stuff is still happening. Right? So that's why I'm like that leaning in piece and doing those needs assessment as really something that you can personalize it to what is working for you. What do you need?
Right. And I like the idea, like you said, of prioritizing your needs.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, is there like a needs assessment or some kind of form that people can just go online, and is there like a standard one, or does each therapist make up one? Like, how can people ask themselves these questions?
True. There's a lot of tools. Erica, I don't know if you have one in particular that you use, but there are a lot of apps also. You know, I know we're trying to come away for ourselves and using the word self-care, but there are a lot of self-care apps like Calm, Shine, Mend, Headspace. And they're not necessarily, I don't think assessment tools sit in these apps, but it may allow the opportunity to do some self-check-in.
Yeah.
A great tool. So when I was looking to the side, so in my coaching business, I have a needs assessment that I created that was very structured and built from not just my experience as a mental health therapist and my career as a social worker, but then my personal experience, the loss that I went through in my life that was just mind-blowing. So that's how I developed this particular one with these very specific, because it was in the middle of what do I know professionally, but then also from this personal experience that rocked my world, you know, what are ways that I dug myself out of this space that I was in. But mindfulness and meditation, I will always praise that. I speak strongly on that, because when you are able to get in a space of practicing the various modalities of meditation to find the one that works for you, I think it brings a level of needs assessment within that, because there's a lot of inner reflection and inner work that happens with that. So there's the guided meditations, the silent ones, the ones with music but no words, body scans, breath work. And so it hones back into that. What are my needs, and what are my needs right now in this moment? Not yesterday, not tomorrow, just right now.
Yeah.
Right. So in addition to so those 4 apps then, because they have a lot of what you spoke of. Headspace, Calm, Mend, and Shine. Those are 4 that I've referred people to for guided meditation.
I'll put this in the show notes.
Okay.
Yeah. I'd also highly recommend Insight Timer. Absolutely love it. I use that a lot with a lot of my clients. I'm also a meditation teacher on Insight Timer, but what I like about it is that you can go in there and really hone it into what works for you. Because when I started meditating like 6 years ago, I was like, I don't have time to sit down and sit here and be still and listen to this, all that. I just didn't. But it has stuff where you can start at 1 minute, 3 minutes. You can build from there, and you can tap into a diversity group of teachers and see what works for you. So I like Insight Timer too.
Nice.
That's interesting, because I started meditating with Deepak and Oprah in like 2010 or 2011, and I didn't sleep. Like, I could never stay awake. But what I realized for myself is that I'm a better movement meditator. I'm not a home sit there. I'm a walk through the park, walk through the water, hiking.
Mindfulness.
So I know that about myself. So I think that you're right. It doesn't look the same for everybody, and I don't want anybody to get pigeonholed into anything. Just what you have both said is that you have to really tune in and say, what do I need right now? Like my daughter, she ain't trying to walk out nowhere. That's not what she needs. She needs to be on the phone, FaceTiming with 10 people. And that's what it makes her feel better and calms her anxiety.
Right. Yeah. We call that mindfulness. You know, it's a property of, you know, a lot of people that that utilize DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy. Mindfulness is a big part of that. So we, you know, in our groups, we'll do mindful eating, mindful walking. Mindful, and you know, so people, we know what to do for the greater part to take care of ourselves, right? Like doing the needs assessment and what we need. We just have to have a moment and opportunity to sit and realize it, to get in tune with that. Do that needs assessment that Erica has and really check in
Right.
and keep that and practice it. But you're doing it.
That's one of the things that I started thinking about and trying to practice, like in 2015 is when I became aware of this, is the being versus doing. So when you're so busy doing, out and about, running the kids here and there, now is the time to just be.
Right.
And so I know that there have been a lot of people have come to a lot of awarenesses based on them just having nothing else to do but to be.
Right.
So one of my friends told me that she grieved her father for the first time in 20 years because she hadn't in all those years, and just being in lockdown, she started popping popcorn, and he used to do that, and she was like, oh my God, and just had a whole meltdown.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, like you're saying, this is the time for us to really try to unpack what we're feeling, because I also heard on NPR, which is my favorite radio station, is that we are experiencing this kind of like a group trauma, and it will sit in our bodies depending on how we individually decide to process it or not for the next 15, 20 years. Like,
absolutely,
these babies will be the Generation Q babies, the quarantine babies, and they will be experiencing things like the World War II babies did. Like, my mom is a World War II baby. She liked to hold on to stuff. Or like to talk about stuff. It's the silent generation. So each generation, you know, we're Gen Xers. So we were like the crack and the MTV and the space shuttle blowing up. These things are imprinted into us. And we know epigenetics, it's in the womb. These pregnant moms during this time, some of them are joyful, some of them are not so joyful because of the unknown. So what can we tell even parents on how to keep an eye on their children and make sure that in addition to them getting some self-preservation, that they do so for their kids, because their kids don't have an idea of what's really going on, except for they don't feel that good. What do you think?
Having two young girls at home, I'd say don't discount a child's voice. Children grieve. So don't discount their voice. Don't underestimate what they see, observe, hear, what they understand and know. Have those conversations with them. Of course, each family and household, they got to do it to the level of comfort for them. Being straight up is a really good practice, and keep it developmental. You know, of course, everybody knows their child and what their capacity is in terms of how much or how little they can handle, or how much or how little they should know. But be open to those conversations. Just don't ignore the fact that they aren't experiencing the same abrupt change that we're experiencing too.
Right. You know, and I'll add to that, let them contribute to what this new normal will be for them, right? Let them weigh in. Our kids have voice. You know, let them weigh into, you know, don't just, I know best as parent, and this is the new routine and this is what we're going to do, and not have them to have their voice at the table and weigh in on what things should look like now.
Well, I know for myself, for my daughter who turned 18 during the pandemic, and like I said, this is her year to graduate. Lots of emotions. And so, you know, one day she was just like, I'm not feeling whatever. I'm like, well, open up the daggone curtains, because you have control over some things. You know what I'm saying? So control what you could control. You could control getting up out of the bed and getting some vitamin D.
Right.
Control walking with me into the woods, you know? So like sometimes I have to pull her along, and then when she gets out there, she's like, Mom, this was great. I'm like, yeah, right. Well, we've been talking a lot, and I've been listening a lot more than I usually do, because usually I'm just like, But I've been listening because, you know, because I study health, and because I try to stay current on the mind, body, spirit part of it. I heard somebody say that, you know, the teenagers are having a lot of trouble because they don't have control now, not like we do. I mean, they don't even know, we don't know what's happening, and we don't have control over it either. We're doing the best we can, but they really don't have any control because they don't have autonomy over anything. And so I've been really trying to listen to her and to try to just let her say what she has to say. And I've been letting her get out a little bit more. Like she's been able to go to Jersey and do things, because I also know that mental health is probably just as dangerous. You know, poor mental hygiene is as dangerous as COVID. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? So we in here doing these vitamin C's, these zincs, and vitamin C's and whatever, to try to make sure that our immunity on all levels is as supported as we can be. And so, what do you think about spirituality? I know you were talking about meditation. What do you think about spirituality in whatever way that looks like for you? How do you
Right.
talk to your clients about that?
Mhm. Yeah. On my end, I mean, spirituality to me is the equivalent of hope, right?
Right.
Like, I think that hope is one of those big things that when someone loses hope, we're in a dangerous space.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times spirituality is connected to that, because you're talking about someone being connected to something that is beyond them, that's beyond us, that's beyond sight. Like, it is a belief that they hope in, and that's what they connect to. So, and everyone's spirituality looks different, as you said, Wendy. And so it's having that conversation. What does that look like? I think a big part of all of this is that communication piece. So I really like that you said that, you sit with her and talk with her, and then also listen. Like, people want to be seen, heard, and validated. And so I think spirituality ties into that in a big way, because people are able to feed into that and get something out of it. So I mean, it's not a space that's, off limits. It's a space that's definitely spoken on, when I'm engaging with clients, to see what does that look like for them. Are they still in that hopeful space? Just checking.
Right. And I took pause because I'm just thinking back. What I've recognized this year is a lot of people really questioning their connection spiritually, whatever that looks like. Like, why is this happening? How is this happening? A lot of questioning, right? And just allowing the space to be able to process that amongst many things, and allow people to go through that process and examine and really unpack and peel that back. But definitely in this year, thinking back we're in 2021 now, but you know what I mean, coming up on this year of COVID, a lot of spiritual questioning, I guess, if that's the best way to phrase it, and even anger around that. And that in itself, I mean, we talked about grief and the stages of that, and recognizing that it's okay to question and be angry and really look at what this means for you now, and and then of course, having to stay home, people feeling disconnected from their personal spiritual source. Again, something about being in person, whatever platform you visit. A lot of people, that being taken away, it's kind of like, what now? And even though we can do, obviously, Zoom now, and a lot of people are, watching online or whatever their connection is initially, big shock, right? Because that was a loss.
Especially for elderly people. Like, I'm thinking, Tameka and I are in a sorority, and I can imagine that our older sorors will be hyped to come to that meeting once a month on a Saturday. That was the only probable way that they got some other connection. And then in church, how they say, give your neighbor a hug, because that might have been the only hug they got all week. So I understand, I do understand that. And I think that's important for us to, I think that, to acknowledge. I know for myself, my spiritual connections have evolved over the last few years. And so now I have had to, like, we're face to face with what this is. And I have my own views on what it is. And I'm a little bit of a conspiracy theorist. So I'm pissed off about what's happening. Like, I'm angry about what's happening. And so I've had to tap into this new being 10 years, this newer way that I identify with spirituality, and make sure it still works for me. And so I even have to ask my daughter, like, she's gone through these changes. I'm like, well, what do you believe? Because I'm not putting on to her what I do.
Right.
And so now she's having to come up with her own ways that she interacts with spirit to calm herself and to give herself some peace. And, I think that's important too. And so I'm glad that you use those tools and talk about those things in your session. So now we're going to close. We have a question from Tasha Scott. Of all the things you've learned over the past year, what's the one thing you wish you would have known at the beginning of the pandemic? And you can both answer that.
Ooh, say that one more time. Look,
Okay.
that's my stalling to figure out my answer.
For the question, Tasha, but she says, of all the things we've learned, what's the one thing we wish we would have known at the beginning of the pandemic? I can answer it while you're trying to figure it out. I didn't know it was going to
last. There's a lot of things. Trying to choose one is.
Yeah. I wish I had known it was going to last this long.
Yeah.
And that my daughter wouldn't have to be in school, because we would have been in another country.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have been here.
Yeah.
I would have done that on the front end. I'd have been out of here.
Yeah.
Oh, that's tough. For me,
that is tough.
Probably, for me, the biggest pain point of this pandemic is the reveal of myself as a mother that I had talked about earlier. So, how to better navigate that space. Yeah, that's the best I can give to that, because
that's a tough question. I'm gonna have to sit with that. I'm gonna take that with me. But I can say,
okay.
I'm sorry.
We have another question after that, so go ahead.
Okay, well, real quickly, I would say that the one thing that I know now that I wish I had learned is that I have what I need to get through this.
Yes.
I questioned that initially, but I have what I need to get through this.
We have what we need to get through this, and everything else.
Yes.
And it's inside of us.
Yes.
If we listen. And I am on that same lesson. I done repeated that lesson. I'm on the 27th iteration.
Right.
So I'm trying to get it. And so my elementary school friend, Darren Edmonds, says he thinks a lot of us have more time and opportunities to read, listen, watch videos, podcasts. And because now we've been exposed to other sources, we're learning history, we're learning religious origins, and he says we're having a great show. So thank you, Darren, for watching with us. I think we've been in COVID university.
Yeah.
Learning ourselves, learning our family structures, learning our work structures, learning what works and what doesn't work.
You're right.
So I believe that. So now, the last question for you is, what do you do for your care? And because I know that I'm looking for a therapist. I don't even have insurance, and I'm looking for a therapist. I have done therapy in several iterations over the years, but like I was telling you all in the beginning, I have a lot of tools, and I have a lot of tools in this pandemic, but because I've been pulling all them joints out, they're kind of dulling now. They're a little bit dull, right?
Right.
So now I'm having to resharpen and to get some new tools to add to the kit. And so in that, I am hearing that therapists, it's harder to find therapists because you all have been so inundated, which is probably why I haven't found one yet. So inundated with nobody's taking any new clients.
Yeah.
So now, one, what are you doing for yourselves, because you're taking all of this in all the time? What are your routines to release these other people's stuff? That's one. And then two, I know Erica, you said you take clients. I know Tameka, you might be taking clients soon at some point. How do people get in touch with you? And, what are you doing for your care? Because that's important. And like, also, what are you all saying to each other? Like, y'all, we stressed out. Like, what is the community, the therapy community saying to each other?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you hit a nail on the head, because I've been looking for a therapist, okay? Because they're therapists too. And
Amen.
booked. I'm currently at capacity. Like it is like that demand is insane. And it's here recently I had to close the books on being able to take anyone else. And I've had a couple that I've still seeped in, and it's a bit heartbreaking. Like, I know that the need is there, but just at capacity. So one, knowing your limits, knowing when, like, okay, I need to be able to make space. And I think for me, when I find myself getting just super irritated, annoyed, frustrated, it's because I haven't had enough time and space for myself. So I have to incorporate spaces and moments for myself in order for me to continue to make space for others and all of the others, clients, the kids, family, all of that stuff. So it's just really crucial about making space, and whatever that space looks like. For tonight, for example, it was, let me leave my house and come to my girlfriend's spot. I call it the Sex and the City pad, where I can have some peace and quiet and be able to disconnect. So,
yeah,
it's really making that space. Yeah. So that's
right.
Yeah.
Same, I think. One thing that's been important for me, using peer resources. So that's been, because I sit in a lot of different settings, right? So, and then I'm trying to even launch my own setting because the need is growing so much in the community. And, I feel some responsibility around that. So I'm trying to, build my networks. Like, I definitely will hang on. I'm already familiar with a practice that you're with, but building my network so that I can refer out to people when I can't take them on. But one thing for myself that's important, and we can go through the whole, we've mentioned a few things in terms of self-care, but energy management has been so important for me. And it's along the same lines as you said, but I'm involved in a lot. So what helps me with my own energy management, so that I can then do all the things that I want to do and have time for me, is blocking. I am a time blocker, and I block time, including my off the grid moments. I will block out naps. I will block out just time to stare at the wall if I need to. And that's okay. And I used to feel so guilty about that. I used to feel so guilty about not being available to everyone and everything. So now what's important to me is energy management and blocking out time for the things that I need to do, my responsibilities, but also responsibilities to myself.
Yeah. I love that you said energy management. I just wanted to add real quick that it's so important, and even like the energy in terms of content that we take in.
Right.
So what we're reading, what we're listening to, who we're sharing space with, and who we have in here. Like all of those things in terms of energy management, I think is definitely crucial during this.
Oh, the news. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't watch that. And I mean, I think always during this situation, and then specifically when it came to the persistent racism that we've been seeing in the election cycle, that diet of that steady diet of that is traumatizing. And I keep telling people, you're re-traumatizing yourself. You have control over watching that. So never call me talking about, did you see? No, because I will be the one who didn't watch it, because that's me controlling my energy. You know what I'm saying?
I will block my news time.
Yeah.
Because I want, I want to stay informed to a certain degree. So I'm like, okay, here is the block of time that I can tolerate taking that in. And it's typically not right after work.
Yeah.
I know the times where I have the capacity to hear that. And that's another valuable lesson that I learned this year, is that I schedule wise, I'm like, oh, wow, I was really piling some things on, and I didn't have the capacity for those things mentally and emotionally in that moment. Something about this has got to change.
Well, if you have an iPhone, they have that, it manages how long you've been on social media and how long you've been on all these different things. And so I started only giving myself a 3-hour limit between all of the 3 things, the platforms that I use. and I have a class every night for an hour. So half the time that's a part of the hour.
Yeah.
So I have to really be careful, but it'll shut you down. It'll
Yeah.
allow you to go outside of it. But if it shuts you down, then I'm like, then I don't need to be on it anymore. You know what I'm saying? Besides you posting for work or posting for whatever you have to do. Have you all heard of the NAP ministry? Do you follow the NAP ministry on Instagram?
I feel like I do.
It's like every Black woman,
Yes.
every Black person, you must follow the
NAP ministry. But that daggone algorithm, I barely see anything. So I'm gonna have to fix that.
The NAP ministry, because it talks about how, you know, we are still colonized. And so our brain is to do. Even in the pandemic, Black mamas are still trying to make everything happen.
Right.
And taking naps and those things are also a part of revolution, because we're not going out there, you know, I'm not fighting the power anymore. I did that in the 80s. I'm not going out walking, but I know that joy and being out in nature and those types of things are also revolutionary. They're also immune boosting. So these are in naps. That's the way the body heals. If you're not sleeping, your body's not healing.
Right.
So the nap ministry is a good way to decolonize yourself from the hustle and grind mentality. The lady who runs it, I forget her name. She is awesome. But I follow her and I look almost every day to remind myself and almost to give myself permission. I'm not a big napper anyway, but to rest.
To rest.
Rest, because that goes a long way in mental health and supporting our mental health.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I want to take your last words and then I'll let you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
Go ahead.
meet yourself where you are. You know, to anybody that's, you know, watching and listening, just meet yourself where you are. This, I think this is just one of those things that we really, you know, I'm very consistent in the things that I say. The power and control, the external may be out of control, but you can control the internal and tap into that. Tap into the different the resources. I'm gonna check out the NAP ministry page. Tap into those things. I just want to shout out someone, Self-Care at 40 blog. It's really, really good as well.
You said Self-Care at 40?
Yeah, Self-Care at 40. Some very practical just tips on self-care, self-preservation. Just all that.
Maybe we need to do the Self-Care at 50 blog, because I'm 50.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Just, you know, people pay attention to your needs, lean into that, be easy on yourself.
You're right. You know, beautifully said. I don't even know that there's anything that I can, you know, add to that. Be easy with yourself, be kind with yourself, however that looks like right now. You know, you may be packaged a little differently than you were before mid-March of last year, and that's okay. You know, be forgiving, you know, of yourself, set your own, you know, expectations of what that looked like. You know, be okay with saying no, be okay with saying yes, just whatever it is, you be okay with that. And yeah, again, beautifully said, I don't even think I can add anything more to that, but just take care of yourself.
So what I'd like to end with, well, my friend Darren is saying that he definitely has a time of social limit. He limits his social media and how people access him. He's also a pastor, so he's pouring into other people, but mental health is a priority, and his wife knows that he needs a certain amount of time every day to wind down. So I think that's important. I think just communicating with the people who are in your home,
right,
you know, about what you need. And if you could think of your body, you know, this is to everybody. If you can think of your body as a tape recorder,
yeah,
it is recording all of your emotions and your conscious and your subconscious, your body, all your organs are absorbing all of these things we're feeling. It absorbs the good and the bad.
Right.
So,
can I add one thing to that?
Sure.
Set your office hours. That's one thing that I had to do for many of my responsibilities. I had to set my office up, the downtime, the off the grid moments. But in that evening, once have done my day and all the extra stuff that I do after, everyone who I think knows me now, they're used to not hearing from me after a certain point. Yeah. Even, you know, because I have to have that downtime,
Yeah.
you know, of self-care. So
Yeah, I mean, that's important. Boundaries.
yeah,
Setting your
healthy boundaries.
are
Yeah,
important. And but just making sure that, because when we don't, like historically, Black women haven't been able to set their own boundaries in all different ways.
right,
You know,
right,
everybody hasn't had that privilege,
right.
especially if they're a spouse and a mom and a
Hmm.
worker and all those things. And
Right,
so your body is really a tape recorder. It's recording the things you say to yourself out loud, the things you're feeling, and then
right,
the energy that's coming toward you, negative and positive. And though it might not feel like it's affecting you now, the body keeps the score. And then
yeah,
it'll pull up the score sheet in front of your face later. So think about, you keep going and you're doing your credit card, but that bill comes eventually.
hmm. Well, we have to do
Comes
that with all
eventually.
this Zooming.
And so, yeah. And so just be really careful and use all these tips. It's going to take me probably another day to add in all the notes that I wanted to. Tameka, if you can send me some of the notes, and Erica, if you can
Yeah,
send me some of the information, and I'll put a few things in, but you need to watch the show because
Absolutely.
we did a good job of laying it all out. I want to thank you all for coming, Erica and Tameka. Thank you, Tameka, for helping me co-produce. Like I said, Tameka is the only person on the planet who's listened to all my shows twice. So I appreciate
I
you.
do.
And she read my book and she talked about my book. So thank you
I
so
do.
much. Thank you so much. So we will let you all go and enjoy the rest of your evening, what's left of it. And I will see you next time in the
Yes,
sanctuary.
indeed.
Peace.
Thank
And
you.
Yeah. Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you.